Hi everyone. I'm sorry that I'm wearing a beanie in today's video. My hair is just, it doesn't look good, so I'm gonna be just wearing this throughout the video. Today I'm gonna be doing kind of a different video that I usually do. Usually I do like makeup videos and stuff, but I have been reading a lot, and within the last like year or so, I never really read a lot after high school. And then my boyfriend told me that he saw this post that was like, somebody, if I was in an argument with somebody and they could just be like, okay, when was the last time you read a book? And that would just like end me. And I just thought it was the funniest thing, but it also put me into a life crisis because I was like, when was the last time I read a book? And I realized that it's been quite a while. So I started reading, and yeah, it's basically the story behind that. Mainly I read like thriller, horror books and stuff like that. But there is a memoir. I don't know if it's technically a memoir or not. You'll know it. You'll know. Like, it's so popular. So, yeah, I'm just gonna get into it. I'm gonna start with the books that I didn't like, that were my least favorite. They weren't bad. They were just like, I don't know. They just didn't really do it for me. So, so this first book, it's by Paul Tremblay. It is Disappearance at Devil's Rock. Basically, the premise of this book is that this 13-year-old boy goes missing, and he goes missing with like two of his friends. Like, well, his two. Basically, they're hanging out in the woods, and he just goes missing, and like the friends are like freaking out, and it just goes into like what the parents go through during, or what the mom goes through during this time, and what the daughter goes through during this time. Basically, strange things start happening. The mom thinks that she sees Tommy's ghost in her bedroom, and random pages torn from Tommy's journal begin to like be placed in the living room. I don't know. At first I was like, this sounds kind of interesting, but reading it back, I'm like, I do like the writing. Like, I do like his writing. It's just like, I don't know. I guess this is just not, it was not the book for me because I just didn't, I don't know. It was kind of boring. It's just like, okay, like, this kid goes missing, and then like, apparently like there's this guy that the kids have been hanging out with that the parents didn't know about, and I'm like, okay. And it was just kind of drawn out for too long, and I was just like, this is kind of dork, and this is kind of just underwhelming, honestly. And then the ending is just not what I wanted it to be at all. Yeah, the ending is just not that great, if I'm being honest. It's kind of confusing. I'm just like, I just didn't, this book is just not that great, in my opinion. And it got to the point while reading it where I just wanted to be done with reading it, which is not what you want to feel when you're reading a book. And I gave it a 2 out of 5. I feel so bad because the next book that I didn't hate it, but like, it's the book that another book that I didn't, what am I trying to say? It's the next book that I didn't really like very much, and it's by the same person, and I feel really bad, but I heard really good things about this book from a YouTuber that I watch. So she said it's her favorite book of all time, so I kind of had really high hopes for this, but yeah, I was kind of just disappointed. I kind of learned from reading this book that I don't really like hauntings and stuff like that. It has to be very has to be something that intrigues me, and this wasn't really intriguing. It's something that I've seen before in movies and stuff, so it didn't really intrigue me. But I wanted to read it because, again, my one of the YouTubers I watched said it was her favorite book of all time. So this is A Head Full of Ghosts by Paul Tremblay. Basically, it's about. Okay, I'll just read you the back. It's a little bit easier to explain things if I just read the back. The lives of the Barretts, a normal suburban New England family, are torn apart when 14-year-old Marjorie, sorry, begins to display signs of acute schizophrenia. To her parents' despair, the doctors are unable to stop Marjorie's bizarre outbursts and subsequent descent into madness as their home devolves devolves into a house of horrors. They reluctantly turn to a local Catholic priest for help. He believes the vulnerable teenager is the victim of demonic possession. And they also contact a production company that is eager to document the Barrett's plight. Okay. He also contacts a production company that is eager to document like what they're going through. Basically, like it's basically like they're recording them just because it basically talks about how they're like low on money and how they're like struggling to get by because of all the medical bills that they have to pay for because of Marjorie's like going to the hospital and stuff, or seeing a doctor and stuff like that. And so they think that doing the show will get them money and stuff like that. It's basically about her being possessed, but they do like throughout the entire book you're like wondering if she's actually like possessed or if she is just mentally ill. So and that question never really gets answered, which kind of is disappointing. Yeah, so that's basically the synopsis of the book. It's a lot more interesting than the previous book, I will say that. I enjoy reading about like different timelines, like past to present. Like one chapter would be from the past, and then oh, I forgot one of the biggest things in the book. So basically, another perspective is 15 years later, Marjorie's younger sister, Mary, recalls the events from her childhood, which I forgot to mention because that's a very big part of the book. So it's kind of bouncing back and forth to like past to present, which I really like. And then there's like a blog. It's kind of weird. I don't know. I don't like it very much. There's like another perspective of a person that's doing like a blog post of like like a review of the show basically. And I just couldn't. He could have cut that out. I really don't think it was important. Like, I get towards the ending, like why it's important, but like, I just didn't care for it. But yeah, I did like the ending of this one. It was definitely a bit different than I thought it would be, but I just wish it gave more answers, basically. But other than that, I gave it a 3 out of 5. So I liked it a bit more than the other one. So this is a chunky boy. I kind of cheating on this one because I read it in 2021, I believe. But I really want to talk about it because I feel like I don't know. I don't really see people talking about it. And that is maybe when it came out it got a lot of hype, but yeah, I don't really see people talking about it. But it is Stephen King's The Institute. I kind of want to say that this is my favorite book I've read by him. So I've only read a couple though, so I can't really, you know. But this one's really interesting. Like, I really liked it. I would totally read this again. I'm gonna read the back because it's kind of hard to explain. So in the middle of the night, in a house on a quiet street in suburban Minneapolis, intruders silently murder Luke Ellis's parents and load him into a black SUV. The operation takes less than 2 minutes. Luke will wake up at the institute in a room that looks just like his own, except there's no windows, and outside his door are other doors behind, which are other kids with special talents, telekinesis, and telepathy. Telepathy? I think that's how you say it. Oh my god, I'm so stupid. Who got to this place the same way Luke did. So that's basically this. There's a little bit more, but I'm not going to read that. But basically, that's what happens. So it's very dark, considering that his parents are literally murdered in the middle of the night. So, but I did. So basically, you get two different story lines. So there's the kid, or I'm sorry, you get two different like characters that you're going to be reading about. Well, like the perspective of, in that obviously one is the kid Luke, and then the other is Tim Jameson, I think that's how you say his name. And he is kind of traveling on his own and doing his own thing, and gets a job at a like police station in like a really small town. Basically, all two main characters that you're gonna get perspectives of. Obviously, there's more characters in the book, but those are the two main characters. But yeah, I really like this book. It's different. Like I kind of read the plot of it, and I was really intrigued by it, and that's kind of why I read it. I feel like it's intriguing because you can't like wrap your head around the fact that like these adults are like treating kids this way. But that makes you want to read more because you want to see them escape. So I was like really intrigued. I was like, I want to see these kids escape this place. And I'm not going to tell you if they do or not, but it's really good. And I mean, this is a pretty big book. It's about 500 pages, a little bit more than 500 pages. So yeah, but I was like intrigued from the start. I read this very quickly. As much as I love this book, there is a part in it that I didn't like. I don't want to spoil it, but because it's like the end of the book and it's kind of like a big turning point and all that. But it's just goofy. I don't like it very much. Yeah. But other than that, I gave it a 4 out of 5. I kind of did this out of order. This is a little less. Like I gave it a 3.5 instead of 4, so my bad. But this is. Wait, did I really? Okay, so this is a really popular book right now. Or at least it was. I'm not sure if it is right now, but it's that like how I heard about it was like on YouTube and stuff. So this is The Last House on Needless Street by Katrina Ward. And I really like the cover of it. It's really awesome. Covers really matter, I feel like look at that. Like I love that cover too. But yeah. If something has like a boring cover, I'm not gonna probably read it. Why? Unless I hear about it, you know what I mean? If you see me looking over here, I have notes right here. I just wanted to make sure I didn't go into this video blinded, because I just wanted to make sure I knew what I was gonna say and stuff like that. So if you see me looking over here, the whole premise of this book is trying to figure out what happened to a little girl 11 years ago. And you're gonna there's multiple different perspectives in here. There's the sister of the little girl who disappeared, and then there is a guy named Ted and a cat. I know, I was kind of like, what? And then also a teenage girl whose name is Lauren. And Lauren is basically described as being held captive by Ted, is kind of what I got from like the it, you know, you can get that vibe whenever you read it. Like you definitely get that vibe. So yeah, so that's basically how it's described. And from the beginning, you're thinking that this guy Ted like has kidnapped the little girl and is keeping her at his house and renamed her Lauren. Like that was like my whole process while reading this book. So that was basically what I thought like throughout this book. Like I was like, this guy is insane. But it goes where you don't think it'll go. Like it's very like you just don't expect it. And like the only thing I didn't like about this book was the chapters about the cat. Like they were a little confusing, but I don't know. I didn't like them as much as maybe the other chapters, but still it's like a solid book, I think. The ending is kind of confusing. Like it is a little bit confusing at first and like a little bit at the end, but I feel like when you like after you read it and you think about it, you're like, oh, okay. So it is a little confusing at first, but yeah, I did really like it though. And I don't know why I gave it a 3.5. I'm gonna give it a 4 out of 5. I think I was just giving too many books 4 out of 5s, so that's why I gave it a 3 out of 5. But yeah, I think I would give this a 4 out of 5. This book I think I read the fastest. I don't know why it intrigued me so much, but this is The House Across the Lake by Riley Sager. Don't really know why it intrigued me so much, but honestly, this book kind of, it really surprised me. I was not expecting it to like it this much, or to like it as much as I did when I was reading it. I think I read like 100 pages one night, or 150 pages, something like that, which is crazy for me. So yeah, I can't believe some people can like read like multiple books in like a week. I'm like, I'm lucky to get through one book in a week. So, but yeah. So when I read so much of this in one day, I knew that I really liked it. I really do like the setting of this book. So let me just kind of tell you what it's about. So it's about a woman named Casey Fletcher, and she's a recently widowed actress trying to escape a streak of bad press and has retreated to the peace and quiet of her family's lake house in Vermont. Armed with a pair of binoculars and several bottles of bourbon, she passes the time watching Tom and Catherine Royce, the glamorous couple living in the house across the lake. One day on the lake, Casey saves Catherine from drowning, and the two strike up a budding friendship. But the more they get to know each other and the longer Casey watches, the more it becomes clear that Catherine and Tom's marriage isn't as perfect as it appears. So yeah, that's basically what it's about. It doesn't sound very interesting, which is basically what I was expecting. Like I was not expecting to like this book. Just like I was like, okay, but it got a lot of hype, so I was like, okay, I'll read it. I'm very easy to persuade, basically. That's what I'm trying to say. I do like that it gets like basically right into it. Like I was expecting like there to be a whole bunch of backstory in the beginning, but literally the first page is when she saves her drowning, which is awesome. Like I love books like that are just gonna get right into it. So yeah, she saves her from drowning, and then like obviously they strike up a conversation and stuff like that. And yeah, it basically goes from there. It does a really good job because like she would see suspicious stuff, and then like that would keep you from that would keep you like wanting to read more, and it was really good at that. Clearly, because I read so much when I read it, and the ending was not what I was expecting, and the plot twist was also very surprising. So I really liked this book. And one of the notes is, keeping me intrigued is hard to do. So I think that's funny because it's true. It's really hard to keep me intrigued with a book. You'll see that like there's a book that I was like really struggling to read, but we'll get to that in a second. But yeah, this one I gave a 4 out of 5. I think it was because the ending is kind of just like not really my, it was kind of, I don't want to spoil it, but it's not really my taste, but I think that's why I gave it a 4 out of 5. This is like probably the biggest book I've ever read. This is a pretty old book, like I think it came out in the 1970s. This is Stephen King's The Stand. Basically, how I like heard about this was because my when I used to work at my old job, then my coworker, he recommended this to me. Like, it's his favorite book, and I'm like, okay. So I bought it and I read it, and it's very big. It's 1,000 something pages, 1,200, yes, almost 1,200. It's about 1,149 pages. So very, very chunky book. There's a lot to say about this book. So I'll tell you the premise of it, which is why it intrigued me in the first place. So I'll read you a little bit of the back. It says, a patient escapes from a biological testing facility, unknowingly carrying a deadly weapon, a mutated strain of superflu that will wipe out 99% of the world's population within a few weeks. Those who remain are scared, bewildered, and in need of a leader. So yeah, I do like those I like these kinds of books where it's about like apocalypse and stuff like that. It's just like, it's something that you can't wrap your head around. I mean, obviously we went through COVID, but the fact that it wipes out 99% of the population is crazy to me. So I was like immediately intrigued in this book. I highly recommend you read this page right here. It's the beginning is basically talking about how this man is basically urging his wife and his child to leave, like, immediately. Like, he's like, pack your stuff, we have to go. Like, there's no convincing him that they can't, so they immediately leave. And then this is like the first official chapter, so it says chapter 1. And then that's when there's a lot of different characters in this book, which I really do like. I really like how you get perspective. I really like books that you get different perspectives on from different characters. Really like those kind of books, and that's basically what this is. So the first person you meet is a man named Stu Redman, which is like one of my favorite characters in this book. He works at a calculator plant. So interesting. And he's basically with a couple of coworkers at a gas station. And while they're sitting there, he looks outside and he sees like a car that's going like pretty slow, but it's like weaving in and out and stuff like that. And it didn't have its lights on, and it wasn't going any more than like 15 miles an hour. And is, like I said, weaving all over the road, and it ends up crashing into the gas station. And when they look inside, they find a woman, a man, and a child. And the man falls out. He's still alive, but the two, the child and the wife are unfortunately passed away. And, they're not in good shape, they clearly didn't die from something that was normal, basically. Like, their throats were swollen and purple and black and like stuff like that. So kind of gets into it in the book. What the guy says, the only thing he says, well, not the only thing, but the last thing he says to the people, Stu and his friends, is that they were sick for the past couple of days, and that he guessed that they didn't leave fast enough, which is very haunting. So that like first few pages really get you, like, really hook you in for sure. Let's talk about the things I didn't like about this book. So the first like half of this book, besides that beginning part and like a couple other parts, are so boring. This is one of the books that I was struggling to read because of how boring it was. I just feel like he went into too much detail sometimes, and I'm just like, dude, who cares? So another thing I didn't like, because I wasn't warned about this, it says the N-word a lot. Like, it's in there like 5 times. And it's like, I get that it was made in the 1970s, but it's still, I feel like that's like no excuse for there to be that word in there. And then also, another thing that made me really uncomfortable was that there was a 16-year-old having sexual relations with a like 35-year-old. Oh, it just made me like want to throw up. And then there's also another scene in the book, yeah, in the book, yeah. And there's also another scene in the book that made me really uncomfortable. If you read the book, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. So those things just like made me not really like the book. I mean, if those things were in there, this would be amazing. This book would be amazing. Because the premise of it is really good. Like, it's so good. I really like the plot in this book, but obviously there is some holes because like just why would he put that stuff in there? I don't know. So yeah, that was really uncomfortable to read, and also the R word is used because there's a mentally disabled person in the book, so they use the R word, and I'm just like, dude. Again, like, I know it was different times, but like still, you know, I can still say that stuff makes me uncomfortable because it does. And it's just I don't want to read that. And then also a big part of the book. So basically, while the illness is spreading, everyone is having like nightmares about this guy that's called the Dark Man, and obviously he's like just basically threatening them basically, and it's just very unnerving, I guess, just like unnerving stuff. And then so that adds like a little something different to it. Like I didn't like hate it. Because obviously, what are you gonna do? Like, what do you like? Obviously, you can write a book about the apocalypse and stuff like that, but the fact that he added something a little different made it a bit more interesting, I feel like. And then also they're having dreams about this woman called Mother, and she is basically a 108-year-old black woman who is basically inviting them to her farm. So they're having dreams about this. She's basically like telling them where to go, and like so they all meet and like all this stuff. So like that's a big part of the book. So yeah, so they think that this woman is gonna save her mother, is gonna save her or save them. So yeah, it's kind of like a lot, and there's also some dark parts of the book where the military is trying to basically cover up what they've done, and like it was very realistic because that's obviously what the military and the government and like military would do, is that they would try to cover something like that up. So it's very just like realistic, and like, oh, it made me very uneasy. Another thing I didn't really like about the book is the ending felt very rushed. So I don't know. Maybe I'm the only one that thinks this, but I did talk to the guy who recommended this book, and he kind of said the same thing. So I think I'm not crazy. I don't want to spoil too much. Basically, like he just skips to like 6 months later and is like, all right, and they lived happily ever after the end. Like, no, I don't like that. You know, like this book didn't make me cry, so be warned. But it's, other than like all the stuff that I said that was bad about it, is a good book. Like the plot, it's there, and I just wish that the beginning was a little shorter because he goes into too much detail like that he doesn't need to. So anyway, so I gave this book a 3.5 out of 5. Yeah, which is surprising because a lot of like I do like the plot more than like the plot of any of the books I read, maybe besides the Institute. But yeah, I give it a 3.5 out of 5 just because of those things that I said. Like yeah, it's gonna be hard for me to pick this up again because of those things. So let's go into my I think my second favorite book I read last year, and that is The Ruins by Scott Smith. This is also a very big book in like the book community, I guess, especially like the thriller horror book area. Clearly, I don't know how to talk. But yeah, so the beginning, the beginning is kind of slow, but once it picks up, it really picks up. And so I'll tell you a little bit. I should probably tell you about the book. All right, so two American couples just out of college enjoy a pleasant, lazy beach holiday together in Mexico as on an impulse, they go off with newfound friends in search of one of their group, the young German who, in pursuit of a girl, has headed for the remote Mayan ruins, site of a fabled archaeological dig. This is what happens from the moment when the searchers moving into the wild interior begin to suspect that there is an indigenous, horrific other among them. This book honestly kind of surprised me. I was kind of like worried that I wouldn't like it because I just was like not really intrigued by that, but because it doesn't really tell you much. Like you don't expect it to get as dark as it does, so just want to put that out there. And then there is a character that really pisses me off, Jeff. I hated his character because like he was the guy. He's the guy that took it to sleep. Like they're basically stranded in these ruins. I'll just say that, not giving too much away. And he gets mad at them for drinking the tequila that they have, and I'm like, dude, like I would do the same thing if I was like trapped somewhere and I had alcohol. I would be getting drunk. If I was in their situation, I would be getting wasted. So yeah, I just thought that was really aggravating. And there's one part of the book that just like, oh, that rubbed me the wrong way. I just don't understand why male authors have to talk about women's boobs all the time. Like it's not that deep. Anyway. But there's literally a part in this book where so Jeff has a girlfriend. Her name is Amy, and then they're also with what's his name? Eric. They're also with Eric and Stacy. There's a part in the book where he compares Amy's nipple to Stacy's nipple. Like he's saying like, oh, Stacy's nipple's darker than Amy's. I'm like, why does that matter? I was just like, I was so annoyed. Like that part almost made me stop reading because I was just like, this is so stupid. Like why would you put that in the book? It's such a I know it's such a small thing, so that's why it's not. I continued reading, but it was just like so annoying. But other than that, I do think that this book is very unsettling and horrible and horrifying. And it's definitely worth the read. I 100% think that. Other than that small little part, it's just like, it's just a small thing. So, but I would 100% recommend this if you are a horror book reader or whatever. Yeah. Truly unsettling. I did read the movie, I did watch the movie. Don't recommend the movie at all. Please read the book. It's so much better. Yeah, I love the book. I would totally read this again. Like I said, it's my second favorite book I read this past year, so I gave it a 4.5 out of 5. Last book that I read this year, or last year, I keep saying this year, is a very popular book, and it's Jeanette McCurdy's I'm Glad My Mom Died. Kind of a funny story. When this came out, I went to Books A Million to see if they had any copies left or anything, and I couldn't find them, So I went up to a worker and I said, hey, like, I'm looking for a book. She asked me what the title was, and I was like, I basically panicked. I was like, oh god. I was like, oh no. And I told her the title, and she, and like I was like, I'm glad my mom died by Jeanette McCurdy. I made sure to put Jeanette McCurdy because that's such a horrible title. But I do understand why she named it that. And I do like the cover. Like, I feel like the pastel yellow and the pink looks really good together. Anyway, long story short, I give it a 5 out of 5. I love this book. It was so worth the wait. I think it took like a month to get, I ordered it and then they had to get it back in stock, so it took like a month for me to get it. But it was so worth it. This book makes me want to read more like memoirs or like nonfiction books. And I honestly hope that Jeanette McCurdy writes more in the future, if she wants to, obviously. Because I really enjoyed reading this book. One of the notes I put in my notebook is Dan Schneider is a horrible human being. I do want to mention, so the iCarly part of this book, where she talks about iCarly and like her experience, it's a very small part. I feel like it got really popularized in the media, obviously because we grew up with iCarly. A lot of us did, so, which I totally understand, but she does talk a lot about a lot more stuff than that, I promise. Like, obviously it's such a, like, I'm glad she talked about it because it's very important. And she also talks about going through eating disorders, toxic relationships, and like going to therapy for her eating disorder and stuff like that. So, and obviously she talks about her mom a lot, like how basically how she grew up. And I know a lot of people are probably being a little harsh on her for the title, which I can kind of understand. It is very harsh, but I think a lot of people can relate to it. I feel like there's a kind of like a stigma around like you have to be nice to your family members or just because they're family, or you have to respect them because they're your family, and it's like that's not the case. And so I feel like a lot of people related to this book because of that. I feel so bad for her, but I'm glad that she's she's found closure. At least I hope so. And yeah, I'm really glad that she wrote this book. I would totally read it again, obviously. She's very good at writing. Honestly, I hope she writes more. I was watching some interviews with her about the, like, when the book came out and like how she was doing promotions, and she's very well spoken as well. And so she's not only a good writer, she's very well spoken. It's truly sad what she had to go through. And I hope that writing this book kind of helped her in some way. I'm just glad that she wrote this book, and I'm glad her mom died too. I mean, kind of, but I feel like that's not my place. So anyway, that is all the books I read in 2022. I can't believe I forgot that for a second. Those are all the books I read in 2022, and I'm hoping to read more in 2023, but I didn't read another Stephen King book. It was okay. You'll probably learn more about that in next year's video. Anyway, I'm gonna go. I've been filming for quite a while, and my mom is home, and my mom and my brother are making a whole bunch of noise. So, yeah. I'm hoping you like this video. I really like. I've been watching a lot of Haley Jean's videos, where she talks about like books and stuff, and so it just inspired me to make a video like that. So I hope you enjoyed this video. You can recommend me books in the comments if you want. I'm totally up to. I have a whole list on Amazon of books that I want to read. So yeah, I'm more than open to hear your suggestions. And yeah, I hope you guys sleep well, and I hope to see you in my next video. Bye, guys.